Alright, looks like we're getting things ready to go here. I know we have Facial's actually going to join me. Help me fill some of this time. I believe they're going over in TeamSpeak right now all of the tools and how, you know, the way that this is going to work. It's actually going to be a little bit different than usual. It's going to be a sort of additive salary cap situation. We'll cover that more as this as it proceeds and as it starts up. Basically, they've got a kind of a unique way of trying to spread out the skill levels amongst these teams, and we'll see that in action as they sort of get this going.
Say that again? Oh yeah, no, what's up? Yeah, it looks like they're putting all the input stuff into the bot and everything, so should be rolling here shortly. I think it actually just imploded. Somebody left, and now I think everybody's leaving it to kind of pay attention. Actually, no, I lied. Maybe there's... Yep, it just kicked off again. Yeah, it's pretty neat how events like this can really bring different communities together. I mean, because like you said, we've got a fair amount of representatives from the 2K4 CTF community as well as the ICTF community, and then people who have been traditional TAM players for the longest time. So.
Channel switch.
What's up? Why do you like to stay high?
The other interesting thing with this draft is the actual draft information, the round salaries and things like that, and the fact that this is an actual hard cap league, which we haven't really had in traditional 2K4 CTF, MLUT events or any draft leagues. So having that as a variable really makes it kind of more interesting. 490 is what it looks like. Yep. Right, which is a really neat idea, and I think as typical, it'll be the team with the cumulative lowest dollar amount will pick first for the subsequent round. So, I do believe that's true. My understanding is 10 players per team, which seems like a lot when you think about it, because the game is played 4 versus 4. But the other interesting thing about this league is they've added in what they're calling developmental matches, where you're only allowed to play like 1 or 2 of your highest salaried players, and then you have to fill in players from the lower tier of your salary list, and that adds somehow points or totals. I'm not sure that whole mathematical equation, but it adds another bit of complexity to this league, and it kind of ensures that players who may not be a top, a top 40 player get to play, which makes it really fun. My understanding is that they count, but maybe somebody who helped set it all up would know a little bit more and could shed some insight there for us.
Yeah, I'm hoping to grab a Steel or someone a little bit later to come down and join us. Obviously, they're all pretty busy at the moment trying to get everything together.
Yep.
I do believe we have all the captains around, or at the very least captain representatives. So on the plus side, we should get this started at a reasonable time.
Yeah, I imagine that it should be starting here pretty quickly, because I believe that all of the captains are here and like you said, or at least represented.
Which
looks like they're all joining it.
Is kind of a first step towards victory, because we've certainly had plenty of drafts in the past where 1 or 2 captains being MIA can really throw things into chaos for a bit.
Yeah, definitely, and it does look like maybe they're all joining the same TeamSpeak channel to coordinate. I don't really know if that's necessary, but I see a lot of the captains actually joining.
Yeah, we seem to have half of the draft actually in that channel.
Yeah. And I know that at least for the better part of the last month, probably even further back than that, since this event was kind of conceptualized and organized, there's been drafts daily. And so I know that a lot of the captains have been watching players and talking to players, and a lot of them have a pretty good idea of what they're going to pick. So hopefully it makes for a really fun event.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely helped that there's been a good amount of pug activity around it. That's one of the things, going into a lot of the capture the flag ones that we've done in the past, you sort of knew what you were getting for the most part for maybe your first 3 or 4 picks. Players, they might be more or less rusty, or maybe their availability would be up in the air, but you kind of already knew most of the established players already. But I imagine that since this is such a mixed bag of players from so many different backgrounds, that you really needed to rely as a captain on watching these pickup games and seeing just where everyone is. I'm even seeing some names that I hadn't seen play in years, so who knows what the rust level is going to be on players like that.
Definitely. I know, for instance, just the other night during a pug, I was talking to Perfection about some of the picks that he could foresee other teams taking and things like that, and he had mentioned that a lot of the people in this draft hadn't seen the name Turns or Turns That Burns, just because he's not a more well-known player within this specific community, or maybe not really within the 2K4 community itself, but just that he is a player who kind of can adapt to whatever FPS game he picks up, and I think that was proven pretty well, I think earlier today or maybe yesterday when he was pugging and displaying some pretty dominant skills.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list and I'm seeing some of these names, that had come and joined and played in some of our Capture the Flag events or even pugs before, and it's kind of interesting to see how people will rank in different contexts, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other really kind of key component here with TAM is that TAM is a mod and a game type that really promotes and kind of enforces action that needs to be taken. I mean, you start out with weapons, you start out with ammo, you start out with health and armor, and you're basically given free reign, so you don't have to control power-ups. It basically just kind of corrals you and puts you into an area where action is, like I said, promoted and kind of enforced. So it makes it a much more interesting event to watch as well, more so than CTF can be, at least for, CTF can kind of start out slow or start out fast, and there really isn't any of that with TAM. It's just kind of go balls to the wall and have fun.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see just what level of coordination some of these pug teams really, achieve, because I've never actually played much TAM like in pickup games. I've played pubs and I've played, of course, with my team, but that in-between sort of quasi-organized gameplay I'd never really seen before, from my own perspective. So I'm curious to see how deep these strategies get, because it's a little harder in TAM to quantify. It's harder to plug and play. In Capture the Flag, you have a lot of defined positions. If you say that you're playing Flag D on Grindel Keep, you pretty much know what you're doing. But when you have these maps where there's a lot more flow, a lot more organic movement around it, and a lot more people splitting up and meeting back together, it really requires a lot of coordination. And I'm curious to see whether some of these teams get picked based on that, like maybe players are familiar with each other, and kind of what we see develop as the league goes on. Because, like I said, I've never really experienced TAM in a pickup team kind of environment.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, and a lot of it also can be maybe broken down into classifying players in one of two groups. Either you are a communication-based player, or really you're not. And it makes it kind of hard, because obviously there's no weapon spawns on the map, there's no pickup spawns on the map, so call-outs on these maps can get kind of hectic. I mean, if you're playing Grendel Keep, for instance, it's not the CTF version of Grendel Keep, but you're still calling that area below rockets. You're still calling that flag room. You're still calling it, amp area, 100 area, 50 area, even though those aren't there. And so there are some maps that a lot of these players may not be familiar with. For instance, maps like Cheops and things like that, I think some of these captains may have to take the time and explain to their players, the different callouts and what they are. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that would be the first thing that I did once I had my team together, is cover all the maps, make sure every single person is aware of every single location, because that's so key. Like you say, there's no objectives in TAM, as far as, there's no static, there's no flags or power-ups or pickups, so it's literally just, it's one team and another team, and you're just kind of flowing and dancing around the map. And there is a little bit of structure in that you typically get one of a couple different configurations of spawns for the teams, so you kind of have a common feel to that. I don't think they're set, if I recall, but it pretty much happens. You're always in one side of the map or the other, essentially, whenever you spawn. So you can sort of reset there, and you can almost treat it like Counter-Strike in a way, where you decide whether you're going to defend this side or attack that side or whatever. But once that gets kind of broken down, things can get hectic in a hurry if you're not organized and you don't know, you don't talk about it ahead of time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it looks like we're going to get some draft action here, as it looks like, Rick James, Jin, and Beck now have all made their, I guess what we're calling their second round picks.
Oh, gotcha.
And I am, I guess, seeing some surprises here with Jin opting to drop a little bit lower on that player list and pick up a guy like Rookie, and Beck actually drops to take Lavak, which really hasn't been around in the pickup games much. So.
Yeah, I mean, Beck and Lavak, they've both been around Capture the Flag for years, so you wonder if maybe they've been talking on the side. Lavak, one of those guys who, he can be extremely effective whenever he decides to play, but has sometimes had issues with his availability in previous leagues. So definitely a bit of a risk on Beck's part, but it could pay off if he's around to show up. I mean, I think Lavak in TAM is something that would be undeniable.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you can get guys like Beck and Lavak perhaps on a more open map where they can utilize that hit scan a little bit better. I think that those two could put together a fairly competent team that could compete at a pretty high level. And their Xenos is going to pick up Cheerios.
All right, Cheerios, I believe I've seen in pubs before, but never seen him play on any actual team. I don't know if he's ever played as any other names. That's another thing. Half of these players I'm sure I've seen in pubs just under different aliases.
Absolutely. Aliasing. Yeah, he has been. And it's actually, a lot of people know, maybe they don't know, that's actually Perfection's brother. Cheerios and Perfection are brothers. Pointing and clicking on a computer screen apparently is a skill that runs in the family.
Well, do they don't share a computer, do they? Because that could make match scheduling a little bit.
They do not. And another thing that should be said is that I know that Cheerios has a 144 Hz monitor, and before the draft league started, Perfection said he was going to go steal it from him. So we'll see how that plays out.
I wonder which one is bigger, which one's older, or both.
Perfection is the older brother, but I believe that Cheerios has about 20 to 30 pounds on him, so it could make for a fun fight to watch.
Yeah, we'll need to get that scheduled ahead of time too. Maybe I can get a webcam up and cast that one.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So you see some more picks come in. It looks like a lot of these captains choosing very quickly. So I think they already have at least 2 to 3 picks in mind. And once it breaks down a bit, and once they start not having, their first choice available, that's when they're going to have to make some decisions.
And I honestly, I think that's probably what happened here with Perfection, because I know that I think that he had his eyes maybe set on Cheerios or even Turns to Burns, and both of those players pick before it comes back around to him. Obviously, he picked Zyos there, which is not a consolation prize, by any means. I mean, that would be more than likely anybody of these captains, quote-unquote second-round pick, their first pickup outside of themselves. But the pick of Zyos there, I think, is that... Oh, no, Reflex. Reflex's pick will complete the first round, I do believe.
Right, yeah. And it is worth noting that their first pick is essentially open. They got $1,000 to play with or $1,000 on top of what was left over from their own pick. So basically, everyone's first pick, they could get anyone they wanted. But starting in the second round now, they're not going to have just an open availability. They're going to have to start thinking about what their salary cap is.
Absolutely. So
by the way,
the combined...
I should mention, Zeos is in here with us, but he was echoing earlier, so I muted him. So if he's been talking or anything, just let me know.
He is talking now,
okay.
And it's better.
Okay, so I think he had just set his headset down or something, and so I just wanted to stop that. Okay, you are now unmuted.
Yo,
What's up? Oh,
yeah,
God,
sorry. I only had my headset plugged in, had to switch computers.
Gotcha.
So now comes in the whole consolidated salary for round picks, I believe, which makes Jin... Yep, Jin gets the first pick of the second round, and he takes Kukui. Actually, no, it was Jin...
Yeah, Jin would be the first, because it reorders based on total salary. So Jin and Rookie now are added up to 1271.
I got confused because the iBot put that, what his total was for the next round, and I thought that he was picking again, and I was like, well, this is crazy, but no. Yeah, Rick James now on the clock.
And now is when it gets a little interesting, because you start seeing guys like Rick James and Jin who basically tried to save up a bit. Like, they both tried to get, I guess what you'd call a good value pick, not that these are unknown players. I mean, Rookie, of course, is Rookie, but their salary caps are significantly now lower than some of these other teams at the top, so you wonder if they're going to maybe try to get bigger salary players in the next 2 rounds as opposed to getting one in the first round.
Yeah, and that seems like a fairly and maybe a little too obvious of a strategy. Maybe you take that best available player to you in round 2, using up all of that $1,000 that's available to you, and then maybe you drop down and start thinking about taking somebody for a lower salary and stockpiling money for a round or maybe 2, and then working your way back up. But I don't know, maybe that seems almost too obvious that some of the players will do, and maybe maybe some people are overthinking it, not thinking enough into it. I don't know.
And the one factor that you never know about is anytime you have a draft is that a lot of these captains have been talking to players on the side, and you never know what the relationship is outside of just the draft order here. There could be players that like playing with each other that maybe they think their chemistry will be more important than fragging power. So you might take a player that on paper may be less well known for his fragging ability, but maybe you think you can work well as a team with.
Oh, well, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, going back to the whole case of Perfection and Cheerios, I mean, they're brothers. They would probably love to play with each other. Obviously, it also helps that they're two of the higher ranked players in the draft order. But
all right, so Rick James going with, I believe he was a newcomer to our last CTF draft league. Is it Phils or Feels? I think I've been told two different things.
Phils, but it stands for efflorescence, so everyone just calls him Phils.
Got it.
Not a bad pick if he shows up.
Yeah, I believe that was that sporadic activity was the issue in the capture the flag as well, and I think that's going to be. I mean, anytime you have a draft league, that's going to be an issue. But I do think having these larger rosters will definitely ensure that everyone's able to field some team for every single match.
Oh, for sure. And I also think that obviously we had a huge surge of players signing up, which also helped us promote the event and boosting up that player count per team. It looks like Beck is going to take Toggle. So there's a case of a player, Beck, dropping down and taking Toggle. Toggle is what, 615 on his list?
If I were smart, I would have the website and on the side.
That's it. Yeah, I have it on my second monitor, so I'm kind of watching it.
That has a list of everyone.
The bot is really helping out quite a bit too. I mean, with letting us know what their combined salary is, or in this case, how it says Beck has 577 for next round.
You can also do an pick, which is like fake pick. You pick somebody, and then it'll give you an idea of how much you have to spend the next round, so you can kind of help predict who you should pick and stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Looks like Xenos is going to drop down. Does it say how much Xenos has? Yeah, Xenos has 677 to spend, so he's looking.
Yeah, that's kind of middle of the road there. Looks like he's probably going to try to pick a good value pick, basically have a save round, and then come back and really blow some money in the next round.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he's going to drop down that low to that 100 or 150 to 400, like he's looking at, I mean, you're going to see guys names like King Kyle and Rev. Even BB, those guys are going to be big value picks, I think, that are going to be able to save him quite a bit of cash towards his next round. Going through the name list, looking at lower value players that I think could really help out his team and save him some cash, which looks like what he's trying to do.
Just bought himself a couple more minutes with his timeout. I don't know what the limitation is. If every captain has a set number of timeouts.
So
like 2 timeouts
remaining.
Two
timeouts?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, it says he had two remaining, and then he took one. So he'll have 1 timeout left. Kind of surprised to see him needing one this early on, though. You would think these guys would be planning for at least the first few rounds. And you figure if he knew who he was going to pick first round, he probably would have known that he needed to take a value pick this round. But of course, like I say, just because people are low on the list doesn't mean they're not extremely important in this league, and so it just shows you how every round is important whenever you have this weird rotating cap system.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and he picks up Buddy, which is a good pick. I think that's a really good. I wouldn't even call Buddy a value pick. I mean, Buddy could add a lot of talent to that team. And the other interesting thing to kind of point out there that him using that timeout is maybe his first pick didn't go the way that he thought, and so he reached out to his first pick and said, "Hey, what do you think for round 2 or round 3, I guess in this case?" and is kind of looking towards that to build a team around his first pick.
Yeah, it's always a possibility. It's like pretty much in the same situation. I mean, whenever you start off with your salary cap being so high up, and then you take a big pick in the first round, he's going to have to look for the next couple of rounds to really make the most of his dollars.
Definitely. And yeah, just like I was saying earlier, he was looking for a value pick, and he picks up King Kyle with the really low salary at 198, or actually 190, sorry. 198. So King Kyle coming in at 198 actually brings, I think that's a little too low for him, but I think that Perfection can really put that pick to good use.
Yeah, and you can see he's still not even going to have $900 to spend on the next round, so he's going to be working his way back up. The question then is, does he decide to save one more round, or does he maybe go with a mid-level pick for 2 rounds in a row? I mean, there's different things you can do here. I think it comes down to what kind of lineup you're expecting to work with.
Reflex is going to pick Ace. I'm not sure what Ace's salary is, and I don't think Ace is a fairly common name. I don't think this is the same Ace that was wearing a Bengals jersey and going to CPL events back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, his
it might be though.
Demo CTF, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got a salary of 108, so just about the lowest salaries available. There's some people with 100, but
yeah.
So that's going to be a big save round for Reflex to try to get him back up there. He's got 956 now for next round, so he can pretty much pick whoever he wants now, if he wants to blow that all in one round. But like we said, you only get 490 per round, so pretty much looking at either going up and down, or you can kind of spread it across a couple rounds, get a couple like higher mid-level salary players.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, the variation to that strategy is obviously going to be if you're going to try to pick a team that meshes well with each other, or just pick based on overall talent. So we'll see. It seems pretty obvious that there's a couple captains. Obviously the last few captains, Perf and Reflex, looking to do that every other round, kind of picking, just at least based on their first couple rounds. So.
Yeah, and I think to some degree that's kind of what you have to do whenever you have a high salary like them and you're starting off, and you're not going to get an early pick in the second round, or really in the second or
Definitely.
third round. So you kind of start off with that pendulum swinging, but maybe it'll even out towards the later rounds.
For sure. And here you see a Captain Steele. Obviously, he's not really messing around. He knows exactly who he wants to go for. He doesn't even think about it. As soon as Northern takes Supreme, Steele locks in Triangle, and I believe we are now on to the next round.
Yep, and what's interesting now is a lot of these salaries have started to consolidate a little bit more. You see lots of captains in that 2,000 range. If I recall, we were seeing many of them having around that $900 to spend. So we may see them sort of having to take picks, I guess, a little more strategically now, because everyone's going to have the ability to choose the same players, certainly if not this round, the next round.
Yeah, definitely. And so here's Steele. Steele goes for Anarchy. What did Steele have? Steele had 943 to spend. He spends just about 8.5. So that's a really good pick, obviously, Anarchy. Anarchy is one of the higher rated players in the draft, not even just left, but just what he brings to the table there.
Yeah, and that gives him 597 for next round. Does that include the addition for next round?
I believe it does. I believe
Okay,
that includes his addition for next round.
So 597 will be his final amount that he can spend next round. So we'll definitely
Correct.
have to
So we'll
look
probably
back down the
see-
list.
Yeah. We'll see probably for this past round is, he'll go back down to the lower areas, grab a player, and then build his way back up with his salary. So now Perfection's up. He's got, roughly 900 to spend, so I think he's pretty much got freedom to pick whoever. That's probably why Zios is quiet right now, because he and Perfection are probably chatting. We'll see what the strategy is. Obviously, he could take a guy like Blimpo at 885, eat up all of his salary, and then drop back down lower. I think if he picks anybody out of this range here, I see him picking, well, I guess Pastafarian's still in there. Or a player like Defeat. Defeat's also a really good player, with a fairly modest salary at 755 that could help him out quite a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to sort of predict in my head, who's going to be available in these later rounds, and with this sort of rotating, or I guess perpetual salary cap system, it really changes the whole strategy and guessing like who's going to be available in what round.
Absolutely, yeah. There it is, and there's the Blimpo pick that I was kind of expecting from him. So he starts out with two extremely strong players, or not. I guess not start out, but he's got Blimpo, he's got Zios, he's got himself. So now the next round he's going to have to drop back down and take a lower salaried player to build his money back up. That's a scary team already on paper, though. I mean, Perfection, Zios, and Blimpo. Those guys could do damage.
Yeah, and that's why I'm finding it very interesting to see how this whole developmental matches, point system or whatever they end up going with, how exactly that factors into it. Because you may have some teams where most of their salary cap is tied up in their top, say, 3 or 4 players, i.e. their starting lineup. But then if they have to play matches with, getting everyone in, they're going to have to start thinking about, well, do you want to save some of that salary for some of the development match players that are going to end up, factoring into how your team does, or how you're ranked, or how you're seeded, or all of that.
Yeah, and it seems the fairly common strategy this past round was to kind of go up there and pick for the majority of your salary and keep your money rolling in that same kind of every other round.
Yeah, people are sort of ping-ponging back and forth.
Yeah, and as soon as I say that, Rick James drops down and takes a 100 value player with Kill 'Em All, and now he has 1100 for the next round. I'll go ahead and say bold strategy, Cotton, just because there's not a lot. I don't know. We'll see if that pays off for him in the end, though.
Well, it looks like Beck may be doing the same thing as far as trying to save up for next round. I'm not sure, again, not being super familiar, I'm not sure how many of the higher salary players here are necessarily highly desired, because again, there's factors like availability and all that I'm really not familiar with some of these guys. Is it at the point where you don't necessarily need to save a ton of money to pick up a good player, or are these guys really still going to be, I guess, heavy hitters that you really want to add to your starting lineup?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I'm kind of looking through the list right now of the players left, and up top you still have Hydro and Pasta who are available, who were listed as partial availability players. After that, it drops down to players like Nolja, Renegade, Sibs, I don't know, and maybe down beyond that. There are still a fair amount of players who are, between that high 600, high 700 range, really. So from about the entire 700 range is really littered with players with partial availability. So we might not see a whole lot of picking from there.
All right, so Rick James is going to be up. He's actually got a pretty sizable lead as far as the salary cap goes. He can pick anyone he wants with impunity at this point. He's not going to really have. It's not even really going to affect his next round either.
Absolutely, yeah. He's got over, or rather less than $200 total value, less than the next closest player, almost 250. So looking at, well, we'll see if he's trying to stay away from people who are partial availability or not. We'll see. Like I said, both Hydro and Pasta are partial availability. I could see him going for a player like Nolja, maybe Fool. I don't know. I guess Nine's in there too.
You go with Sides.
I don't know much. Yeah, I don't know much about that pick, so I'm probably not doing that guy justice here. So.
Well, I do know that Rick James a much bigger UT99 background as far as so he might be more familiar with some of those community players, folks that I know that I myself wouldn't be as familiar with. So maybe he knows something I don't.
Yeah, and he probably does. I mean, like you said, he's been playing the game for a long time, and he's been in and out of the different communities from each of the different titles in the Unreal series, so he probably has a good understanding of who he wants to pick.
Tampug channel is pretty quiet, so I'm actually going to pop that away and bring up my Twitch chat here. So, any of you guys watching on Twitch, you are now the second IRC channel, so feel free to, I don't know, shout yourself out. So what do we got here? Beck still choosing 942. That's right. He saved last round, so he can also choose essentially whatever he wants.
Yep, he's got a pretty big salary.
And there he goes. They're going for Pasta. So actually, yeah, two of those higher level players or higher salary players left, going off the board immediately in this round.
Yep. Now we drop down to Xenos. Yep.
Yeah, I was saying, now we're getting into these captains that don't have. They kind of have to make a choice. This is what I find it interesting. Xenos now in this position where he can try to pick a sort of mid to high player and then have basically start over with the salary cap next round, or he can try to save it and bank this round and then get a higher salary player next round. And those decisions are really what come into play here, because he has to try to guess, well, has he got a specific player in mind? Is someone else going to pick him this round? Can someone else pick him this round?
Yeah, if I'm in his position, I'm probably looking for somebody between 3 and 370-ish value. That way, that 490, when it gets added back to him, he can kind of pick across the board. Because the other thing to think about is that we're what, 2 picks into this next round. There's 10 teams total, so he's going to have there's going to be a lot of players off the board again by the time it's back to his turn picking. So we'll see which way he decides to go, though.
Yeah, it seems like he's looking to bank another round. Which to me, if you're doing that, you have to have your next pick in line. You have to know who you're going to pick up from that top bracket. You're going to go down and try to grab another, like we say, a value pick. You have to have your next pick at least in your head, because otherwise you're taking a pretty big risk.
You would think so, and I guess at this point, if he value picks this round, then if he takes somebody around the 100-ish range, what does he have, 500? So he'd have 900 saved up, and then another 490 after that. So he could potentially take a couple $600 value picks at that point, back to back.
Yeah, well, he definitely bought low, and he's going to have a lot of money to spend. In fact, he can afford any player left on the board next round. So we'll see if he had someone in mind, if he was planning ahead, or if he just wanted to give himself just a blank palette to work with, and then try to figure it out in the meantime.
Yeah, and so Reflex now with 618 to spend, he's kind of decides to look for all the players between that value, the lowest possible value of 100 and his max. I don't see him spending max here. I see him spending maybe low 200.
So you say maybe just bump up his bracket next round. So maybe next round he can get 700. You think?
Yeah, maybe. Realistically, I'm just looking at the players and players' names that I've seen in and about Pugs. I know a guy like Me Too Soft. He is active player, so he might be something that Reflex might look at. That's in that low value range that could give him a fair amount of cash for the next round.
Interesting.
Grabs Knockout Dad, who was. So yeah, Reflex will have what, 640 for the next round?
Yeah, not a lot. So he kind of broke even, I suppose, on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 618, and then he ended up with 640. So he's going to be stuck in that mid range for a while, unless he really wants to save up one.
Yeah, but kind of what I was alluding to earlier. I mean, we're getting down to the middle rounds where a lot of those high value players are gone. So a lot of these guys are going to be picking from your 5 to mid 600 range now. So I don't think that was too bad of a pick. Banco and Knockout Dad are now off the board. Steel's up Northern is up with 534 to spend now.
Yeah, Steel got that pick in right off the bat, so he knew exactly what he was looking for there.
Yeah, he really hasn't wasted any time or spent much time really looking at the list. He kind of came to this prepared for a team that he had on paper, and it seems like all the cards are really falling his way right now. So
everything's coming up Millhouse.
Everything is.
So Northern here with 534. I mean, there's really not a whole lot that I think you're gonna spend that on. I think a lot of these mid-level players are probably gonna come off the board a little bit later in the round. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him go back down to the lower mid range and maybe the 200s. That way he can give himself a little bit more breathing room for the next round.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the smart play. Just kind of looking at that low value. Barely gets the timeout in there, just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
So he's. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going through this list. So what did we say that he had? 500 and some to spend. 597.
So basically the same range that Reflex was looking at before. He had 618 to spend. So that list that's up there is pretty much what he's looking at right now. And I think a lot of those are players whose names I've never even seen before. So I think that's going to be, it's really going to come down then to these captains' relationships with some of those guys. I'm presuming a lot of those guys are coming from pubs or UT99 or Instagram, other game types. So it's really all about now what these captains' relationships are, like whether they've seen these guys pug, whether they've talked to them, whether they played in previous games or whatever. I mean, that's what's going to really help them differentiate and not just be a list of names, because these players are all going to have to get sorted through one way or another, because these captains aren't just going to have high-level and low-level picks. Eventually, they're going to even out and have to pick some mid-level guys too.
Oh, for sure, definitely. And so and that's the other thing too, is I see a lot of names on here that I know that have never pugged. So I think a lot of those I don't really want to call them, a filler pick because they may show up to play. But a lot of these captains, there's a big unknown about some of these players. So we'll see. We'll see if they just, spend the money on. Okay, so we see Northern pick Jesus or Jesus.
That'll give him some more breathing room again next round with 777, and he can get up there into some of those mid-high picks that are still on the board. And that's essentially your top bracket now. I mean, you don't have to worry about having $950 free to pick a top-level player that's remaining anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it looks like Jin kind of has a really good idea of the at least the value of players he wants to pick. So he must have a very
specific idea.
Yeah. So he must have a really good idea of who he wants to target next round. I see Jin probably picking up Sponge here based on the value of player he's looking for right now. Drop down to that 113 range, grab Sponge, or 116, I guess. Grab Sponge and then grab whatever he's thinking about for his next pick.
Well, now maybe that's what he's doing right now. Is he's lining up his next pick and trying to decide whether he wants to go that up and down route or whether he wants to play it more in the middle of the pack. He's only got 523 to spin though, so.
Oh, he drops down and takes Miracle. So Miracle's what, a 200? Not quite 200. 270. So 272. So not quite 300. So. Looks like Jin's got 741, so not quite that 800 value I think maybe he was hoping for, but...
Yeah, I think what he's doing is he's doing the math here with that fake pick, see who he can pick, and also try to get... I think he has someone in that 800 range in mind, and he's trying to figure out who he can pick this round to give him a good value, but also allow him to afford Hydro or Nolja or whoever he's looking at for the next round.
Yeah, I think he's looking at Nolja, honestly. I think he's got his target set on Nolja, and he had to take off his socks real quick and count the toes to make sure that his numbers were right.
Yep, you can see him picking.
So he's going to grab Me Too Soft.
And what did that give him left over? 831. So he wouldn't be going for Hydro. Either Renegade or Nolja. That's definitely one of those two. Yeah. So it's interesting though because he's not going to be the only person who can afford him. And
definitely not.
If someone else picks him ahead of time.
And Perf jumps right up and grabs Knives. Which I know Knives was on Perf's list of players that he wanted to grab, so I think that's a big grab for him.
Yeah, and it's good he was able to get a player he wanted within these fairly tight restraints. Xenos going with Hydro. If I was Jin, I was a little bit nervous there because, like we say, we saw Xenos lining up his pick just like Jin did, and I was curious to see if they were going to go for the same guy or not.
Absolutely, and Steel has that same option available to him as well. He could grab whoever he needs. Zyos, is that the same Hydro that is a CTF player, or is it a different guy?
Different guy. He usually aliases as Birdman in Pub.
Okay.
Pub was. He does really well usually, so not a bad pick.
Yeah, that's not Hydro from Notorious 187, etc., etc. He's a big anger guy out of Dallas. I haven't seen him online in a while, but that's. Definitely doesn't play TAM.
I know that Hydro kind of moved on to doing console games. He sent me a message a while back asking me to join a I don't remember the name of it. What's the Xbox One first-person shooter that came out on launch day that everybody was Titanfall. He's kind of trying to be a Titanfall player, and I don't know how that's working out for him. So.
Still doing pretty well with his saving his money.
Yeah, Steel has a lot of options available. Good. Yeah, definitely.
Got 3 solid players himself, Brian, Anarchy, and a lot of money. So build it right now. Pretty good lineup.
There it is. There's the Nolja pick for what was that 812. So
yep. So Jin now is going to be in a tough position.
Yeah, 831. So if he was looking for that 800 range, like he was alluding to earlier, he's got Renegade available to him.
Yeah, I think he may have been trying to line up Nolja. So again, that's the risk you take whenever you're trying to line up multiple picks in a row.
Absolutely, especially when you make it that public too.
Yeah, it was pretty clear what he was going for. But he'll still have plenty of money to spend. He can still choose kind of whoever he wants, but let's see what he decides to do. As we're pretty much down into the 700s range now as the most expensive salaries available. So I think you're going to see a lot of these picks trending toward the middle of the pack now, because, like I say, you don't really have to worry about saving up as much because the top salary is only 804 now.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so we're going to see a lot of middle of the pack picks here to not only bolster lineups, but they're also going to keep money flowing. So.
So I don't know what I do here from Jin. I mean, I don't know if he knows Renegade, or is the 795, is that just Killing? Is that just the name?
Yeah, Killing is just the name, I think. Okay. Yeah, I don't recognize the name, but
yeah, I mean, essentially now you've got Renegade, Killing, Cookie. Some of the it's a lot. I guess slower decline now in prices. So you can pretty much bracket all those guys together and choose whichever one you want, but he's not going to get that higher end salary player that he was looking at before. So may just decide to even it back out and maybe pick two mid-level players with this money he's saved up.
And that's probably what I would end up doing. I'd probably look to your 700 range or maybe your high 600 range and try to find a couple players that that can help you out in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 431 this round, so if you add this round and next round, you could get a pair of 600 something players. And we're seeing a lot of captains utilizing these timeouts here. I think this more complex system definitely requires a little bit more thought and adjustment on their part.
Yeah, definitely. And
especially when you see your plan.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the other thing to remember is there's not only just a round salary cap, but there's also an overall salary cap as well. So, at the end of last round, every team was in that $3,000 mark. The highest team pushing that 3,400-ish. So with a 5,900 cap, I don't know if any team's actually going to come close to that. We'll see. I guess they'll probably come fairly close to it, but I don't think that it'll inhibit any picks really.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a rolling cap like that, it kind of I think negates the need for a hard overall cap, because you've essentially set one already.
Right.
Got the fake pick of Cookie, so he may be doing that now, deciding to spread out his money across 2 rounds since he doesn't have that big home run pick that he was looking for anymore. Now, the benefit of this too is if he does go with a sort of, I guess, mid-level pick, it also won't push him too far up the salary cap, so he may get an early pick again next round.
Yeah, that's definitely true too. The question would be if he's got he has the money for the player that he's looking at next round, or if he can get in ahead of time to get to him. So
well, he went back up the ladder there, so
he's 542 for the next round. Yeah, I imagine that next round he'll probably pick low and try to work his way back up to that $600 to $700 range, but we'll see. Now you got Rick James on the clock.
Didn't see that next order command come out, so maybe he's thinking ahead. It's trying to decide whether he wants to try to get a 2-for-1 here.
Yeah. With 7098 available to him too, he could take pretty much anybody on the board really. I mean, obviously anybody but Renegade.
Right. And he may even be thinking to himself, maybe he wants Renegade and maybe he can lock up 2 picks in a row and make sure he gets them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, drop down, take a 200 value player, and then.
I think he might be listening to you.
Yeah. And a lot of these names are unfamiliar to me. I think Sponge at 116 is probably the only player that I know that is active, or at least has been active in some of these pugs. But even myself, I haven't been super active here recently, so.
Looks like he's got something tactical planned here. Maybe he's got something in mind that he wants to do. I imagine he's going to try to manipulate. He's thinking about at least manipulating this round, choosing a low pick like we said, so he can get an early pick next round to try to lock down a specific player.
Yep.
Yeah,
so he ends up taking Ninja.
Yeah, he goes with that $100 value pick, and he's going to have 1,100 or almost 1,200 to spend next round, virtually guaranteeing him that he'll have the first pick. Decide if he decides to start spending some money, he can spend in the 700s the next 2 rounds and still have some left over.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it. So, and Pool gets taken off the board, leaving Northern with 500 for next round, and I think Reflex will be the last pick this round, I believe. Nope, Perfection and Beck still have to pick, so.
Right. And you can see all the picks left. I mean, you've still got some lower price picks, but definitely we're seeing a bunch of condensed salaries, all these middle of the road ones that, like I say, I don't really know a lot of these names, and the names I do know, I don't necessarily know how active they are or will be. So this is where the captains really have to have done their homework ahead of time. Because otherwise, you're pretty much just playing bingo.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you can throw enough darts at a dartboard to get lucky eventually, but you don't have that many options here. So, the Reflex with 640 to spend. I see him maybe dropping down, taking somebody in the 200 range this pick, and then giving himself somebody in the 600 for the next. But I'm not sure. We'll see. And in that 200 range, yeah, like Miracle at 272, who's an active player. He picks Kush. Kush is
264.
64, so the player right below Miracle.
Oh yes, as a matter of fact. So that'll give him the freedom to pick any player on the board next round. So that when you start off, like we say with Reflex, who was that $1,000 pick. I mean, this is kind of what he had to work towards. Is he knew he wasn't going to have real open reign until these later rounds to picking whoever he wants. But now it's all on him, and it's all dependent upon just who he wants to add to his lineup. And I think this next round for Reflex will essentially be like the 3rd or 4th round for some of these other captains, where he really chooses a starting lineup member.
Yeah, for sure. And now we're seeing Perfection here. He's kind of taking a look at the lower value players and at the higher value players, probably trying to set himself up for a pick for the next round, doing some quick math in his head. Again, there's quite a few players that are still available who can definitely frag and help out teams. So, I don't really know what he'd be thinking here. So, what does he have to spend? He's looking at 605. Obviously, he's going to get 490 next round.
So yeah, he's right in that situation, kind of like where. Okay, well, he decides to spread it out. He doesn't really want to save this round. He'll have a decent amount to spend next round, but he certainly didn't go all the way down to the cheapest picks on that one.
Yeah, definitely. But still leaving himself 692 available for the next round still sets him up with a really good salary to snag. The probably what would be considered the second tier of highest available players left. So he'll have plenty of options, I think, available to him.
And I don't want to give away anything, but as if any captain's been talking to you on the side as we sort of roll in on these middle of the road picks. I mean, you're one of those guys on the board there that people are going to be looking to fill out their rosters with now that they've got those really expensive picks and then the really cheap value picks kind of off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one captain kind of talk to me a little bit. I don't know if it was anything serious or not. He just kind of said a few things in passing, so we'll see. I'm kind of an overrated CTF player with an inflated salary here, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, James picking Renegades. It looks like that was one he had definitely set up. If you recall, he was doing the math there, and he left himself with almost 1,200. So that was the pick he wanted to guarantee he locked in. And
the disgusting thing is he still leaves himself with 874 for the next round, so still available to pick up anyone he wants.
Yeah, he's definitely been extremely fruitful. And now's when that's going to pay off, because now he doesn't have to be looking at these value players try to go back and forth and build up some money. Now he can get 2 or 3 picks in a row that are basically anyone that he wants.
Definitely, yeah. And I don't see players like Sick, Defeat, or Nine. I don't see those guys staying on the board too much longer. I have a feeling anybody with enough funds to spend and still getting enough off that 490 refresh next round, I think those guys' names are going to get called here real quick this round.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Beck is obviously put himself in a position. I think he's probably going to spend a lot. I mean, you can see what he's looking at. It's the 700 range. He's going to go ahead and grab himself a starter here. This will probably be what his team looking at. Him, Levac, Toggle. So yeah, he's actually got a pretty solid lineup so far as it is. So in fact, he may even, kind of depending on Levac with that risky pick with the availability. This pick might be his 4th starter for him.
Very, very much so. Yep, absolutely true. So,
an important pick for Beck, in other words.
Yeah, I think this could be a very crucial pick to the team, and honestly, for a lot of these teams, I mean, you're looking at teams who have done fairly similar things with the every other pick, high value, low value. So, this could be the round that evens up a lot of these teams, or kind of fills out that starting lineup, as it were. And he actually does go high. He picks 746, so he goes for Lass. And still leaves himself with, just north of 700 for the next round, which is plenty of money.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Lass is going to be is going to round out his starting lineup. But again, with that availability question mark that's always around Levac, definitely want to pick at least another potential starter. So I think he'll probably be spending again next round. Maybe just the last rounds filling out the rest of his team.
Definitely, yeah. And then Reflux comes in with 866 to spend, and he actually spends a lion's share of that money on killing. 795, leaving himself only just north of 550 for the next round. So he'll with his next pick.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not familiar with killing at all, so but I presume these captains, have a better understanding than me.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of these guys have done their work. So and Steele's able to grab BP, which was I guess a low 700 range player. No, he's a high 700, right? He was. I don't see him on the list. No, I think BP is actually a lower range.
Yeah, it must have been, because he's not in that 700 range on there.
Yep, and he set himself up for 703. So yeah, he set himself up for a good pick.
So, okay, so going with like I say, you start looking at value in a lot of these rounds as you're trying to save up. You want players that are going to outplay their salary, essentially.
For sure, definitely. Yeah, you're just at that point, you're kind of hoping for one of the guys that can come in to either help out your starting team that you think is a dark horse or a sleeper, so to speak, or anybody who can really give you solid play and points in those developmental games. So. Yeah, Xenos with 560, so he doesn't have everything available to him, but he's got enough that he can get build out roster and stack that money for the next pick. So shows he's looking for that 1 to 300 range.
I'm almost tempted to jump into the channel up above us, because I'm just so curious what it's like in there with a good 2 or 3 dozen of these captains and players hanging out together and wondering who's saying, what information is or isn't being passed around up there. Be kind of curious.
I have a feeling it's probably pretty classified right now.
I wonder if there's any redirection going on, any misinformation being spread.
There you go, Zyos. Are you in contact with your captain? Is he asking for insight for picks?
I am. He's pretty
that's all he'll tell us until the end.
Who he wants, and of course, we both know different players, so that helps.
Yeah. How about team name? Any insight on what your team name is going to be?
Yeah, I don't really know yet. We could go with the team name of what I had in the last TAM Freon tourney, which was Sharks with friggin' lasers, but who knows? If you know Austin Powers at all.
Oh yeah.
Alright, so Xenos picking Bubba. I'm not sure where Bubba was on that list.
The lower
280.
I think
it gets interesting here on the lower end. You get a lot of people that aren't active, but so their skill level is kind of up in the air, as to whether they're going to show it and surprise everyone. So I think this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the top tier of players was definitely a lot more known quantities, and then what he keeps commenting on, we saw a lot of this ping-ponging back and forth, that people would go big pick, low pick, and work our way towards the middle here. And I think in the middle here is where you have a lot more of the question marks, and definitely a lot more uncertainty with availability and skill and rust and all those things that there's really a reason a lot of these guys are in the middle of the room.
Jin sets himself up with Miracle, leaving him 760 for next round, which is enough to get any player, I think, left available on the board. If not any player, pretty close to any player, so.
Yeah, I think you have Sick is 775, but
yeah,
I think 755.
Yep. So anybody but that absolute top pick.
And given that he was doing the math there, he might have been setting himself up. I mean, Jin tried to do that a couple rounds ago and ended up backfiring on him. But he might be thinking of someone like, say, Defeat. Might have been doing the math there.
Yeah, that's very, very possible. So now it's Northern. Is Northern the last pick in this round?
He is.
Yes,
and
Northern.
He does not have much to spend.
Yeah.
But I mean, he picked up full last round, so climbed the ladder a little bit for that one, and that's why he is where he is now. He didn't have much left over, so he'll be just looking to find basically like we say, a value. You want to spend as little money as possible, but get someone who can contribute. That's sometimes the hardest thing to find in these drafts. May see another timeout here as we're
does he have another timeout available?
He's got
to him?
one timeout remaining.
Okay. Oh, yep, there you go. I didn't even see that the bot said that. That's nice.
And there it goes. So, further than blowing his last time out here, he's going to have to be careful now in the future, because I believe what it does is it automatically chooses the highest salary player that's available. So, not necessarily helpful to run out of timeouts and you need some extra time. It could actually end up handicapping your next couple picks in a draft system like this. Well, not much going on now as we're just waiting on Northern to make his pick. I'm kind of surprised to not see him, using any of the bot commands to add up any math or anything. It may just be that he's in a case where he's just looking for a player that he knows, or trying to find out something about these players.
My guess is the delay has to do with him probably being in contact with his first and second picks. Trying to get their insight. Kind of working off of that, because yeah, you're right. I mean, the silence is pretty deafening.
I'm guessing what's going on is a lot of. Have you ever heard of any of these guys?
Y'all want to pop up in the other channel? See what there seems to be pretty talkative up there. What's
it looks
going
like
on?
We got 30 seconds to go. He's got no timeout, so if he doesn't make a pick here, it's going to automatically choose. Probably cut. It's going to choose the most expensive player.
Yep.
I guess that he can afford, which appears to be cut, unless there's a 501 or something somewhere. Oh, he's got a choice. Will he get it in time? Okay, looks like he did get the pick in time. So, just barely made it.
Not sure if he did, because he picked 149. I don't know if that picks the actual player or the value.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
it looks like
it might have gotten auto picked for him.
He picked Chosen.
But it
Chosen definitely
CSN
wasn't the highest available. Yeah, it picked CSN for him.
Okay.
Was CSN 149 value?
Not.
No way.
Let's see.
No, he was 501.
Wait,
so he did.
No,
so he did get his pick.
Toxin. So yeah, I think it did pick what he had.
CSN was 501, so he got the auto
missed
pick.
his pick there.
And and that's gonna handicap him next round as well. So.
Yep, and RJ goes climbs a ladder and grabs defeat, so the second highest player available on the board right now is gone.
And given what he was, when he was lining up that math with his last pick, I think that's not necessarily a surprise.
No, not at all. And honestly, still leaves himself with just north of 600 for the next round, which is plenty to spend, honestly, at this point. So. Now Xenos has, what does Xenos have? 770 to spend, so we can get anybody on the board, right? Yep, I think anybody.
Yeah,
grabs 9.
It's interesting to look at Rick James's strategy. He kind of took the opposite strategy of the other players. He built up stuff early on, and then the last couple rounds he's been picking high-level players, higher salary players. Rather.
Yeah, and we are on, whatever round number we are on, round 8. So we're in round 8, and teams are at $4,000 before picking these picks. So we are getting up into, by the end of this round, these teams will be pushing that $5,000 mark. And with 2 picks to go.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. They still got 2 more picks to go. Or I guess it's going to be 2 after this round. So. Correct.
Yep.
Some of these guys have 3 picks, and they have to start looking at how much they can spend per pick there.
Right. Yeah, and a guy like Northern, at 4,447 of a team salary, if he buys a $600 player, he's at 5,000. So his last 2 remaining picks are going to have to be, averaging roughly $450 per player.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is he's going to have 493 to play with this round. So he essentially spent all of it last round. So he's going to be pretty lean the rest of it.
In under a minute to pick with 1 timeout still remaining, we may.
I'm kind of surprised. Didn't it look like Jin was lining something up for this round? I wonder if.
It seemed like it.
I wonder if defeat was his plan, and if Rick James stole that one away from him.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, there are still plenty of big names still available. I mean, 9 was also taken, so defeat and 9 are off the board. So you are probably right in the fact that his hoped pick has probably been taken from him. So now he's kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what method to go with now.
Yeah, I'm scrolling up in chat, and we did see him do that range 600 to 1,000 last round, and then fake pick, and then pick Miracle, so he could line up something. Guessing that was one of the players that disappeared. He still has the money to choose one of those other players, but you never know how it could have gone. He could have had both defeat and 9, in his sights, and all of a sudden they both get picked in order, and he's sent back to the drawing board.
Yeah, my guess is that pretty much exactly is that he had those players in his sights, and because those names are fairly known, at least in the TAM Pug channel, so he probably recognized those names, knew they were solid players, and was hoping to snag one of them, and they obviously fell through.
Yeah, that's rough. That's the second time that's happened to him in this draft already, but that's just how it goes. That's all the strategy, and you never know too how often it happened to other captains as well. We only see it out up front here because we see people doing the math, and so then it's a little easier to predict. But I'm sure there's been plenty of captains who had picks lined up and then had them taken away from them at the last minute.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and that happens obviously in every draft format league we have. I mean, I remember the last UT2004 TAM event that we had. I remember, I think 2 or 3 picks in a row, I snagged somebody that Linoleum was looking at or hoping to get, and I remember him throwing a couple expletives my way after I snagged one of them.
Well, Jin has no timeouts left, so if he's not careful, we may end up seeing another auto pick come in here.
Yeah, that would probably not be good for him at this point.
It actually goes with Linoleum. So right on cue. Lino goes out the window. I believe he's been playing a good amount of TAM lately, just from what he's been talking.
Yeah, I believe that's right. I know he's been complaining a lot about ping lately, too. Going on, I'm not 100% sure on that, though.
Yeah, and there's always the possibility that he gets wiped out by a hurricane, so...
That is true. That is true. Or gets his head taken off by a fish at work. Or who knows, maybe the other end of the spectrum. Maybe his band gets signed to a huge contract and he goes on a global tour.
Yeah, I believe they did just release their album or something, if I recall. I think he was talking about that.
I believe it's being mastered currently, and I believe the release date is sometime in next month.
Okay.
I've heard that it will be played on the radio also.
To find out what the publishing situation is with that, maybe I can get some of that on the air background.
Yeah, there you go. I know he's got some teaser tracks out there. I've been able to listen to at least one, so.
Beck with it. It seems like a lot of these captains now are kind of having a hard time figuring out, sort of sorting through the components of these players. I think a lot of which are probably either not that well known, maybe less active.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I think a lot of it obviously is going to come down to money. I mean, a lot of this is, at the end of the day, is going to be a money game, so, they've got how much to spend in this round, but they've also got to remember that, at least for the players that are still picking in this round, they have 3 picks left, and they have to keep that total value under 5,900.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking up, and you remember last round, Beck went with Last, which was a pick that he had basically set up for. He's definitely been going that essentially every other round, picking a starting lineup player, and then rounding it out with a more value pick behind it. So at this point, I think Beck's team is essentially where he wanted it to be at this point, and I think now he's basically just trying to fill the rest of the spots as effectively as possible. But that's the tough thing about it, is he may not have really planned this far ahead. He may have just basically wanted to get to this point where he had his starters and he had some backups and got the team where he wanted it to be, and now he just is kind of having to wing it for this last bit. And I think this is probably where a lot of the captains are going to be at right about now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we'll see. He's under a minute to go, so he's going to have to make a decision here in the next second. So.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of timeouts picked here, or a lot of timeouts during picks here.
He picks Donut. So where was Donut at on this list? I think he was...
Well, Beck has set himself up where he can spend any amount. Yeah, he can buy any player next round. So I'm presuming Donut was probably relatively low.
Yeah, 444.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there he is right there.
Took me a bit to find him too. So, yeah, he's got himself set up really well for the next round. 444. What did Beck have as a team salary going into this round? Beck was sitting at 42.27. So he hasn't even eclipsed that $5,000 range with 2 picks to go. He could pretty much buy whoever he wants at this point, no worries. Assuming he has the round salary to get there. So Steele drops, I think, 697. So Toxicon at 697, leaving Steele with
well, that was a fake pick. He's doing some math here, so he may be lining this up. Steele's been pretty on the ball, like knowing who he wants to get ahead of time, so maybe getting into a little bit of tactics here.
Yeah, that's. I think that's probably what threw me for the loop there, is because every time, there's been no hesitation with him. He's just kind of gripped it and ripped it right off the round. So. Yep. But you're right, definitely. And
there he
decided
goes.
to pick Toxicon. The Reflex is up now with 561 to spend. Was Reflex the last pick of this round? Is not. So Perfection and Northern
About
still have to pick
through,
after Reflex.
A lot of these picks are going to be a little bit slower, because as we're seeing, I think captains are basically looking at a wall full of players that they maybe don't have a whole lot of information about. They still want to make the best picks possible. So you see Reflex going with Sonic. Now, there's been a lot of Sonics. It's a very common name in the UT community over the years. Any insight on like which Sonic that is? Like what his background is?
I'm honestly not sure. I've seen so many players with that name. It's kind of hard to track them all.
Okay, Killamaw is saying that this Sonic is from Instagib Capture the Flag. I presume that would be UT99 then? don't recall there being any Sonic in 2K4's IGCTF community. Yep, UT2004. Okay. Well, that explains why I wasn't super familiar with this one.
And now we're going to see a TAM Pug kickoff because everybody is done watching the draft.
Yeah, I think most of the guys sitting around, really active players have pretty much been off the board at this point.
Yep, I would agree. Perfection does still have those 2 timeouts available, which he may elect to use now.
Yeah, I'm curious who the 4th starter for Perfection's team would be. You figure him, Zeos, and Blimpo will probably be planned as starters, but then you've got King Cow, Knives, Peace, and Fallacy. I'm not super familiar with any of those names, at least not in a TAM context.
Knives is much better than his salary depicts, that's for certain. It would not surprise me to see him being the 4th. I also, perhaps Perfection goes next round with 728 to spend and grabs somebody in that mid-6 to low 7 for his 4th starter.
It's a distinct possibility, and again, interesting to see with this draft system that's an option that people can pick in the 9th round and have someone who's going to be a starter.
Definitely. I mean, there's I mean, and I think you probably have that in any draft league. I mean, the drafts are only as good as the rankings and the salaries can only be as good as the players are active and as truthful as people who are giving those salaries are. So if you've got a guy coming out of the woodwork who is an amazing player and in kind of a community that isn't really well represented, then he could slide under the radar, and if somebody knows him, then they might be able to snag him for dirt cheap.
Yeah, that's actually how I ended up playing Capture the Flag in the very first MOUT of 2K4. I was basically known as a TDM player, which is what I was. I was a TDM player. Went completely undrafted, and I think our captain went MIA or something, and I ended up getting picked up kind of randomly because I was a low salary player that they knew was at least around. I ended up riding that all the way to the finals.
Yep. Oh yeah. That's I mean that's pretty common, at least in the CTF side of things. Is there are TDM players or duelers who are obviously good fraggers, and so they're available and they can play, then you pick them up and you throw them in. Now that's translated really well with guys like Rookie and you, and I think for a while Combat Carl was on a CTF team for a while.
I think he actually had I think back in the UT99 days he had a lot of CTF experience, but he didn't really come into his own until the 2K3 days where he was focused on duel and TDM. But yeah, he definitely played a little bit of Capture the Flag in 2K4. Yeah, it was interesting to see that high of a duel player then try to learn how to translocate again, because it's not as easy as you think.
Not at all.
Lord knows I had to fight Kuski for years to get used to the translocator.
The Northern grabs Blackout.
Yeah, and some of these captains now they're stockpiling a bit of money for this next round. I don't know if they have people in mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is Beck the last to pick in this round, or do we start a new round? Oh no. Oh no, we're already on round. So we're on round 9. So we're halfway through round 9.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. I was confused there for a second, but yeah, it makes sense now. So.
So back going with vengeance.
Big V. I have not seen him playing TAM. I have not seen him playing anything outside of Counter-Strike lately. So, and Perfection picks Lursion.
Yeah, Lursion I know of as he plays multiple games. I think he might have originally been a Quake player.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think we met him through Shoot Mania and Nexus and stuff. So he's a guy who's around. I've seen him playing the game reasonably often. I don't know what his background in UT is, so he might be one of those guys that's come from other games and is now picking it up. but he's definitely active. So sometimes that's kind of the most important aspect whenever you're kind of filling out your team in the final rounds like that. Is if nothing else, you want people that are going to be around.
Yeah, definitely. And now that we're getting down into the later rounds here, and obviously there's probably going to be some players that are left that are undrafted. I'm curious as to what the free agency looks like for this event.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because I mean, you're always going to have players that show up and then like 2 weeks into the league they just disappear because they just lose interest or they get busy with life or whatever. So obviously the captains are going to need the ability to work with the free agents to some degree. I haven't heard the actual the rules on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously your team will have to stay under its salary cap, but outside of that, I mean, is there a waiver wire order based on team standings or rankings or anything like that? I don't know. I guess that has yet to be determined or at least made public knowledge. So
yeah, I do have full access to all of the admins for this event, so something I can find out later, or even maybe after the draft, we can pull Steele or somebody in and kind of get an idea of what they're planning to do with all that. So Jin doing some more math. We've seen him do this before. I wonder if he's setting up a pick of maybe like a Dimko for the next round. Dimko is someone who certainly has experience. I don't know how active he's been lately, but he decides to start playing again. I mean, he could definitely be one of those players that rounds out a starting lineup even. Rick James grabbed Bug real fast. Pretty much knew exactly where he was going there.
And the interesting thing is obviously this is the 9th round. So Rick James leaving himself 565 for the very last round. Jin leaving himself 608 for the last round. So not necessarily available to grab the absolute best player out there, at least left on the list. But he'll have enough to pick up a decent pick, under his team salary limit. So
yeah, they'll definitely be able to climb the ladder a little bit there. Very curious to see what they decide to do then. And again, curious to find out who's gonna have the first pick next round. Is it gonna be Jin or Rick James? It looks like it's gonna be Jin, so he shouldn't get a pick stolen out from under him again. But you never know. We'll see what these other captains do. I guess, given that he picked to have 608 left, he has to be thinking about someone like Dimko. I mean, he's at 599. You got Infamous at 591. Maybe even Mintek at 583.
yeah, I think we'll see. Obviously, the biggest factor here will be once this round is over, we'll be able to see what all the teams' cumulative salary is, and at that point we'll have a really good idea of who's looking at what. Looks like Xenos was force-picked Sneed. Reflexes of...
It's 542 is what that caused Xenos. So he's going to basically have nothing left basically just have the extra round cash available for his last pick.
Flex is doing a little bit of math here, trying to set himself up for a good 10th round pick, it looks like. Flex leaving himself with enough money to buy whoever he wants now. Oh, no, never mind. He did not make that pick, so looks like he's maybe trying to figure out if he can set himself up for
You see him making use of all of the bots commands there. Yeah. Be surprised to see him take a timeout here. I mean, when you've only got 2 rounds left, or 2 picks left to make, might as well burn those timeouts if you want to give yourself some time to line it up.
Yeah, for sure. And he does have both of those timeouts left available, so. Does grab Rev, so leaves himself with 613 left for the final round.
Again, curious to know whether he had someone in mind he's going to be shooting for. Just thought Rev was going to be a good pick for the value down there. It's 378. He definitely could have gone cheaper if he was just trying to save up.
Absolutely. I don't know if he was trying to save up or not. He does have. What does he have left? 613. So. Yeah, I don't know.
We're seeing a couple captains that are going to be right around that upper 5s to lower 6 range. So you wonder if people like Infamous and Demco and Mintech and DSK are going to be getting picked next round. If people were setting themselves up for that, or see what's going to happen. I think some of these more expensive players on the board are essentially going to be priced out now. I don't think many of them are going to be mathematically capable of being picked up this 10th round.
Yeah, I would even say, going anybody in the 600 range may not be getting picked up all the way down to, to myself at 640 or even Hobo at 624. I mean, it's going to be hard for a lot of these players to get picked up, at least based on these current teams and these current salaries on these teams. So it wouldn't surprise me to see free agency shuffle after the draft based on some of the players that are still available, but we'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah, we'll try to get one of the admins in here to maybe clarify some of the rules and the plans on dealing with free agency. And I don't think we'll have any holdouts, but like we said, there's always quite a few players that'll show up into a draft league, and then maybe a couple weeks into it they end up getting pulled away, and captains are going to need to replace them. So find out what the plan is for that a little bit later. Still goes ahead and takes a timeout. Pretty sure that's the first. Yeah, that's his first timeout, because like we said, he's been pretty quick to make his picks, so definitely done his homework leading up to this.
Is Steel the okay? So Steel picks Extreme Shot, leaving him 534 for the last round. Yeah, so there you see every team with at least 5,200. Some as high as 50. What's the highest? 54, 26.
Yeah, 54.26 the highest. We're going to see, based on the amount to spend, Northern's going to have 659. So, anyone from stack up is going to be mathematically unable to be drafted. I think Northern's going to try anyway. And gets denied by the bot. I can only guess that he wanted to just see what would happen if he did that, because certainly he probably didn't think he was going to get away with that. You do see Hobo going. I think what's going to happen is all these captains at this point probably going to go ahead and just spend, the most money they can, and essentially probably just get the highest salary player they can afford. I certainly do think that some of these captains may have been setting up a pick for this last round, because there was a lot of fake picks and math going on.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. Flex has, 613 to spend, so he can get anybody from Demco down.
And it's kind of curious, because I thought that Reflex, since he was doing math last round, I thought he had someone in mind, around this range, because it seemed like he had a few different fake picks going, and it seemed like he was trying to set himself up for a window that he could pick up someone here. So I figured he would be going after one of these high 5 players. But now he's kind of mulling about, maybe we didn't have a specific plan. But again, I think it was what was it that he picked up? Was there It's Rev, right? Yeah. So again, maybe he did just like Rev as a pick as opposed to, wasn't specifically looking to line up this last pick. He also has plenty of timeouts remaining, so he can take his time here too.
So there is kind of a little bit of an update based on the developmental stuff, is that your developmental games, it looks like your roster, you specify who your starters are, so you go through and you pick out who your 4 starters are, and then your developmental games consist of 1 member of your starting team and 3 members of your lower salaried for the dev matches instead of it being the 2 and 2.
Interesting.
But then again, yeah, we haven't really been given much insight into how those developmental matches or anything like that, how those work. So
Curious how they're going to count towards your team's total. If they're just going to count just as much as any other match, or if there's going to be like a point system. We'll hopefully get some more clarification on that at a future time. Reflex taking his time out here, not surprising.
as he ends up with velocity. Now Jin with 608 to pick, he's kind of in the same boat. Anybody from Demco down?
Yep, again, another captain that I thought might have been setting himself up specifically for that dollar amount, so we'll see if you had anything in mind. Of course, Jin's pretty much been attempting to do that all draft. It seemed like he's been setting up pick after pick and then having them taken from under him.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
But unlike Reflex, Jin not going to have any timeouts. So if he doesn't pick, he will probably, what does he have, 608? I think that's going to give him Dimco. If it auto-picks, that is.
Yeah, I think it has to.
And at this point, he's probably asking all the other captains, hey, did anybody got any suggestions? Because, like we've kind of mentioned before, at this point, when you're really just filling out the last spot on your team, at times you may be willing to sacrifice potential skill ceiling for activity. Maybe you don't want a player that was good, or would be good if they showed up, but you don't know if they're going to be around.
Back up now with 584 to spend.
Jin there, that throwing in the emoticon, I'm kind of surprised that didn't screw up the bot. He could very well could have ended up with the Dimco pick there against his will. So yeah, 584. So Beck, well, you see him. He actually listed his range exactly for what he could afford.
Yep. And maybe that's a plan. Maybe some of these guys are not going to spend the full salary with this last pick, knowing that there's somebody in the free agency roster that they want to grab, so they're maybe going to make an adjustment or drop somebody and use the money they have left over to get another kind of a bonus pick, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's what would have to happen, right? Is they would have to basically drop 2 players and pick up 2 players.
Yep.
Unless they're picking up someone that's less than a drop, obviously.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
there's the final timeout for Beck. I think we're going to see a lot of these captains using their timeouts in this final round.
Yeah.
But again, though, like I said, rearranging the draft like this, it changes your priorities to where not all the captains. You're not just filling spots at this point because you want to make it count, and especially with those developmental matches, there really are no throwaway picks in this draft.
Right. Yeah, it's. I mean, everything's important. So we'll see. Looks like as the draft comes to a conclusion here, it looks like my only chance to get on a team is going to be if somebody drops somebody and I get picked up from free agency, which is kind of disappointing. I was actually hoping to play in this event, but we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, like I said, there's always lots of people who show up on draft night and disappear. So,
right.
So maybe someone will need some activity.
Right.
Rick James with
picks.
Yep, snuck that one in. Rick James, pretty much the exact same range as Beck had before. Is like $20 less to spend. So,
yep.
Pretty much still see what players are available for him.
Yeah, looks like he can take anybody that is monk down.
We'll say this, it was kind of nice to get this draft going earlier in the evening because now we still got plenty of time to play games and party or do whatever people want to do Sunday evening.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
it's like this is going to be wrapping up here relatively soon.
It's good. Oh, he does get the timeout in. Wow.
just beforehand. So that would have picked up Monk for him. So if he doesn't come up with anything, he's going to end up with Monk. So like, okay, looks like Piece of Sheet, I guess, changed to his less well-known alias, I guess. Oh, Kill 'Em All's wife's making him go clean. See, you should have spent all morning cleaning so that you had the evening free for the draft. I mean, you got to plan these things ahead of time. Or you should have woken up before her and just swept everything under the rug.
Gotta do adult things.
I, for instance, slept all morning because I drank too much last night. So it's been a very productive day for me. Alright, so Rick James here, taking it. Oh, there he goes. Ends up grabbing Monk. So I think that may have been a situation where he really just was at a loss at who to pick, and he just decided to let the salaries tell the story and just basically choose the highest rated player available. For anyone who doesn't know, I mean, all of these salaries are essentially the combined rankings of the captains, I believe. So, in a sense, you can kind of tell, you know, it is the sort of thinking on how you would rate the players, so it's not a bad thing to go off of. Although with lots of question marks in the air about some of these mid-level players, it's not necessarily 100% accurate either.
Yeah, they just do the best that they can with what they're given. So. Jin thinks that we were saying bad things about his team. No, Jin, we weren't saying bad things about your team. We were saying things that your draft strategy kept getting stolen from you because it seemed like you were making picks and doing math to try to target players in future rounds, and it seemed like a lot of those players that you may have been targeting were being taken before you had the time to.
Yeah, in other words, you got to do a better job lying and misdirecting the other captains. Got to make them think you want someone else, and then they go after that. And you laugh at them as you choose your real team.
True.
All about that fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Draft is over.
Yeah, you saw those last few picks come in, and hey, shouts to Fro getting picked up last second. Steele again coming in with that quick pick. I'm not even sure who Ponage is, but he definitely knew who he wanted.
Yeah, he definitely did.
So there you can see the all of the captains in their picks. I guess we can run down them. I mean, we're playing 4-on-4 this season, so you're really pretty much gonna only worry about who the starting lineups are, because that affects who the developmental players are as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, let's start with Perfection's team. So obviously, Perfection, Zyos, King Kyle, Blimpo Knives, Piece of Sheet, Fallacy, Exists, Lursion, and Fro. I think Lursion has the potential to maybe crack that top 4, depending on availability and playstyle. But I would say if I were to put a top 4 lineup out of there, Perfection, Zyos, Blimpo, and Knives are probably that top 4.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the most recognizable names from as far as I'm concerned, like on his roster. Like those are all players, or at least mostly players that I've at least seen around. So I think he'll probably have no issues with activity. That's going to be very important, especially coming in for these developmental games. You still have to be able to fill the team, of course. But yeah, he has kind of a wide open. I think Knives, I don't think I've really played with much. I'm not super familiar with him, but yeah, definitely he's definitely going to have some decisions to make, because there's lots of guys on that team that are active and have played a lot. I don't know what their stance is going to be in TAM, and I think that's going to be sort of the story for me looking at some of these players. I might know how they played in CTF or whatever, but TAM is obviously a completely different game type.
Okay.
But I guess moving down to Beck, I mean, Beck, of course, we saw take Lavak, which could end up being extremely important pick one way or another. If he shows up and he plays for him, he could be really, really important. If he doesn't, then he's going to be looking to fill that space, and it's going to be very difficult. But obviously, Beck, Lavak, I don't know, I guess Pasta and Lass would be his starting 4.
Yeah, I think I believe that Pasta is one of the limited availability players. So if not Pasta, I think you might see Toggle or even Big V if Vengeance gets active and shows up. So that team has the potential to have a very flexible top 4. Obviously, outside of Lovak, and Pasta and Lovak are both very good TAM players. Beck himself is also a very good TAM player, but pretty much the rest of that roster is pretty consistent mid-level, pretty good players though. So I think that they have quite a bit of potential there.
Okay, so we might even see them rotate based on things like map preferences.
Yeah, they very well could have that potential. So.
All right, now Jin, we saw him obviously have to change some of his strategies. Nolja and Banco, he said he was going for. Had both of them swiped out from under him, but I mean, he did end up with himself, Rookie, and Kukui just to start with. So it seemed like he was going really right off the bat trying to fill out his lineup. Not real familiar with some of the other players on his roster, though. I don't know if maybe you can shed some more light on that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I was distracted for a second.
Other than Jin, so you got Jin, Rookie, and Kukui, and that's what he started off his roster. But I'm not real familiar with some of the guys left on that roster. Obviously, Linoleum being a capture the flag player. Like you said, Lino's been having potential network issues. He said, so it makes me wonder. I would think he has the potential to be one of their starters if he's around and he's not having any issues. But I don't know what his availability or connection status is.
Yeah, his connection status leaves a lot of doubt there, truthfully. So, like you said, Jin, Rookie, Kukui, I think that's a pretty locked-in top 3. I could see a guy like Cookie cracking into that top 4, and maybe Linoleum. Yeah, I think it probably sticks right there. I think you have the potential for 4 of those 5 players being that top 3. I don't know much about unit or the last 2 players, but kind of just based on salary and where everybody ended up.
Yeah, and then Steel's team is really the story of players that I don't know anything about. So I'm hoping you have a little bit more knowledge than me. I'm guessing obviously Steel and Brian would be starters, and based on how he picked, I'm guessing Nolja would be considered one of those starter level players as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, Steel's starting lineup, almost without question, is going to be Steel, Brian, Anarchy, and Nolja. And in truth, that's going to be a disgusting top 4, and just a disgusting starting lineup. That team just has fragging potential for days. Anarchy is a very, very good fragger and TAM player. Same with Nolja. Brian and Steel obviously falling right into that category as well. BP is also a very good fragger, so it would not surprise me to see that team do very well in both the starting teams and the developmental teams as well. They've got a very good roster top to bottom.
Well, Steel definitely seemed to have done at least as much homework as any other captains. He had very few moments of hesitation. He definitely knew which players he was going after, and maybe we'll see that pay dividends.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll, he was. I think he was probably one of, and if not the only captain who really had his picks lined up and scouted out before each round started. I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 rounds where he actually looked at the list of players. So very, very confident picking, which should hopefully scare a lot of these other teams, because he knew exactly what he was going for, and it for all intents and purposes, I would say he got it.
And it's not just about having a plan; it's about having a backup plan and then a backup to your backup, because everything can change so quickly in a draft order.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. That team is extremely scary on paper, but I don't know what else we can say about them. So we can drop down to do, I guess, Northern, which Northern picked up. So Northern's team is obviously Northern, Turns the Burns, Supreme, Pencil Eye Pirate, Jesus, Fool, Chosen, Hinata, Blackout, and Hobo. Again, I would say another pretty good team top to bottom. I don't know much about Turns, but I know that he is an extremely talented FPS player that seems to excel in every format and game that he picks up.
He was extremely highly rated, so certainly the captains believed that he was going to be an extremely important player.
And then, I'm just answering some PMs from people who apparently are already looking to the free agency list.
Oh, gotcha.
And then, so Supreme. I don't know a ton about Supreme, but Pencil Eye Pirate is a very good player. I can't say I know much about Jesus. Fool is a very good player. Chosen is a very good player. And Hobo is a very good player. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, six players. And that developmental side aspect of this team could also be very good as well. If I were to give this team a starting 4, I would say that it would be Northern, Turns the Burns, Pencil Eye Pirate, and probably Fool. Depending on availability, I could see Chosen or Hobo crack that top 4 as well. But if everybody on this team were to show up every night and have the availability, I think that top 4 goes Northern, Turns, Pencil Eye Pirate, and Fool.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think some of these teams certainly are going to have more defined starting lineups than others. But of course, they do have to choose them. I mean, they have to put that tag on them for the sake of the developmental matches. So it'll be interesting to see what those captains decide to do there.
Yeah, we'll have to see what ends up going on there. But yeah, once we get a little bit better at an explanation, and once we finish these roster kind of synopsis, our analysis of it, maybe we pull in a couple captains or some admins and we chat.
We'll see who's around. Anyone who's listening who wants to hop in, I mean, feel free to hit us up on IRC. We're going to be talking about this for a little while. So let's just move down, though. Go on to Rick James. Now, Rick James had a really weird sort of out of order stop. For most of the draft, he had the first pick in rounds because he had stockpiled so much money. His first pick, Ski. I'm not familiar with that name.
A lot of times I think that he plays under the name of Sekai, S-E-K-A-I. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be completely wrong. But I know that a lot of people refer to him as very good player, very good TAM and fragging sense. I think he absolutely is a very good pick there.
Okay, and then we saw him, again, potentially, I mean, Renegade and Defeat were two of his higher salary picks, and he saved those for the 7th and 8th rounds. Do you think those two are going to be on a starting lineup as well?
Sorry, which two were
Renegade and Defeat?
So Renegade, yes, I think will be on a starting 5. I'm kind of curious why so many teams were straying away from picking up Defeat. Defeat is a very good fragger. I maybe more so known for his 1v1 skills.
Yeah, he's known as a dueler, but again, you would think if anything translates to TAM, it would
absolutely.
be,
I mean, yeah, just take a fantastic dueler, put one other person just to kind of play wingman for him and play as a kind of a support, so he doesn't get tag teamed or get shot in the back. And I think you've got a pretty decent strategy, utilizing Defeat's skill set. So Rick James. So with Rick James's team, his team to me is the biggest hodgepodge of names. And a lot of that could be just because I don't know a lot of these players. It doesn't seem like with all the other players, I can look with all the other teams, with all the other teams, I can look at the players that he picked, and I can put together a strategy. I can say, okay, these are the maps these guys are going to look to play. This is the style that they're going to play, whether it be a rushing style or a sit back and take pot shots. With Rick James, I can't say that I know for sure what's going on there. If I look at his roster, I say that it's going to be Rick James, Renegade, and Defeat are going to be his top 4, but that's just going off of names that I recognize. You've got a guy like Sibes. I mean, Sibes was a high-rated player, and Bug seemed to be a player that he jumped at the chance to get, so maybe he knows something about Bug that we don't know.
Yeah, well,
I
do know that Rick James has a heavy UT99, background, so maybe some of these are UT99 players that he knows more about than I do. That we had like Phil's, came in and played pretty well in the Capture the Flag when he was around, so maybe he's been playing more 2K4. This could actually be the one thing about Rick James' team. It might be the only team where he doesn't start himself. He might actually list 4 of his other players as his starters. And so I think that makes his team a little bit interesting to see what he decides to do with that from like a tactical perspective.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. So
a bunch of question marks on Rick James' team, but it'll be interesting to see what comes about.
Yeah. So we'll take a look at Reflex's team now. So you've got Reflex, Chubby, Ace, Serenity, Banco, Kush, Rev, and Velocity. I don't know much about the latter half of that roster outside of Rev. Obviously, Sonic, we were told, is a very good, what did we say, UT99, ITTF, and apparently a very good dueler also. I don't know much about Banco, but I know that other teams were targeting him, so he must be a fairly good player.
Yeah, Jin said that he was trying that Reflex swiped him out from under him.
Yeah.
So you figure he's probably going to be a starter.
Yeah, you imagine so. And I know Serenity will be a starter, and I'm assuming based on availability that Chubby would also be a starter. So if I had to give them a top 4, obviously it would be Reflex, Chubby, Serenity, and Banco. Rev is a very good player. Sonic is a very good player. So those guys could have a really good developmental squad also.
Okay, yeah, I mean, based on, I'm not familiar with Chubby, but since everyone essentially had their pick, their first pick can be essentially wide open, you have to figure that Reflex held him in high regards there.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that what Reflex typed after the draft was completed, where he said that he was trading Chubby for anyone, literally anyone, was a joke. But we'll see what happens.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a very straightforward team. I don't think there's too many question marks there.
Yeah,
I think Reflex knew what he wanted.
Yeah, I think he actually drafted the most traditional order. He basically filled out a starting lineup and then filled out the rest of the team, as opposed to some of these other guys that did a lot more bouncing around. And actually, I mean, I guess if you look down, I'm really curious to find out how Xenos' team ends up, because you figure him and Cheerios are definitely gonna start. Hero of Time sounds familiar. Does he play under any other names?
Not that I'm aware of. I think Zyos would know better than I would if he was had a different name. But again, I kind of agree with you. You know, you see those top 2 names, you see Cheerios, you say okay, and then it kind of drops off after that. At least as far as star potential goes. Buddy is a name that everybody recognizes, whether it's for good or for bad. And you look down the roster, you see 9. I'm not sure what 9's availability is, but I think he absolutely has to be a starter on this team. As for who the 4th starter is, I think your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, this may be one of those where they have their skill level, I guess I could say, evened out across the whole team, so they may not necessarily have that, the top 4 and then a skill drop off and then your developmental type players. This may be one where they're sort of a lot more interchangeable throughout the rest of the roster. I mean, that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, because now that we've got these developmental matches that count, and that whole, it's a whole different different strategy there for naming your starters and all that. So it could be that you have a team that does a lot better in their developmental matches, maybe doesn't necessarily excel so much in their normal matches. I guess they can make up some points that way.
Yeah. I mean, and again, we'll have to get some insight into how all that format works. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good, at least straightforward analysis look at the teams on paper that we can do. Do you want to see if we can maybe find an admin or a couple of these captains, bring them in one at a time and give them a talk, and maybe I can figure out if they have any plans to pick anybody up on free agency? Hint, hint.
Yeah, right now I think we should probably go ahead and see if we can grab Steel, or I don't know if these captains are now going to be furiously looking at trades and free agency and stuff. But it would certainly be nice to have an admin jump in here and give us a little bit of insight into how this is going to kick off and when it's going to kick off, and really just pass along information. Let's see. Steel's audio is muted, so probably not going to grab him.
Yeah, you can probably just ping it, or PM him on IRC or whatever, and see if they're available. Trying to think here. I think Reflex and Steel are what the 2 quote-unquote admins of the league, so I think either of those guys would be good to talk about any of that stuff, or we could start scooping up captains. I know Perfection is around, Jin is around. I think obviously all the captains should be around. I don't think any of them had to take off immediately.
Poke some people. Old TeamSpeak client. Oh, I don't have permissions to poke people on the server.
What? Riot.
Oh, Monk actually PM'd me and said that evidently the developmental games are worth half of the points of the regular games, or at least that's how they've done it in the past.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
there's an actual real
still
value
important, there. Just not, it's just half the value, I guess. And I guess they'll use a point system or something along those lines.
So Steel is around, but he's in a pug right now. So you might actually be able to talk to him real quick before he joins the pug.
Well, let's see. Pop this down real quick. The IRC's kind of quieted down.
The other interesting name to see not playing is commonly known as Failsauce in the CTF community. I think he tries to be known as Ninja Turtles or Turtles Ninja in the TAM community. That way, not all communities hate him as equal. I'm surprised he wasn't in the draft. I think he was added, but then he asked to be removed.